Hello, I'm the Werewolf, and this is episode 91 of Werewolf the Podcast, Stories from My Past. There are loads of things down in the description-y thing down in the description doofer. You can come and join the Facebook group, which is actually cool. I quite enjoy that. You could do things on Twitter and Instagram and yeah. Thank you to those who've shared me with their friends or reviewed me or done anything like that. That is absolutely amazing of you. Please share and review and do and things because that's absolutely fantastic. The podcast grows. I'm in the top 40% of podcasts. Yeah, that's a bit crazy, isn't it? Top 40% of podcasts, which is fantastic for such a small niche audience, as it were. So, having said that, let's crack on with the story. I want to destroy. There's no greater feeling than destroying something that can't be fixed. You know, something that can never be rebuilt or remade. Watching the light of life flutter and fly from the eyes of something at death gives me chills. I'm a larkist. I want to cut and create disasters. You know, as quoted in lots of film media and hastily written literature, I want to see the world burn. But it's more than that for me. I want to light the fucker up and know I did the deed, and at the point of reprieve I want to pour extra petrol of hate on the flames and kill the saviours of the situation a moment before it's rescued. Sorry about that. I do get emotional in these seminal moments. Seminal. Get it? Seminal sounds like semen. That's rude. Yeah, thank fuck that's the childish 15-year-old part of me back after that highly charged, ruthless, grown-up moment. I am never in a rush for a good bit of viciousness and nastiness. It may take years in some cases to get the results I want, but I can wait, when I've got the right ideas. I don't mean to brag here, but I have amassed enormous wealth. Nah, that was complete bollocks. Of course I like to brag about my massive amounts of cash. I like money and materialistic shit. Having cash makes life very much more agreeable. If I want something, I can typically buy it. If I want to do it, I can afford to do so. A painful truth for the poor is that once you have wealth, it is pretty effortless to get much wealthier. You have to be pretty stupid these days not to make more money if you have money. Investing my cash has meant that it's consistently grown and grown and grown to a point where I have much more than I can ever spend. I've invested in all sorts of things and all sorts of ideas. I try to make everything, of course, as unethical as possible. And to be honest, with the business world, it's pretty easy. I've invested in diamond mines, in sweatshops, in apple factories and cobalt mines. You name a place where I can make the human world a little worse and a little more painful, and I've probably helped it out financially. I did. I had an amazing tour. I went to see the giant factories in China. They are such sights of human misery. They had to put up suicide nets over the courtyards to stop the fucking workers from fucking committing fucking suicide. That's amazing. These torture factories weren't even my idea. I couldn't have come up with some of the intolerable conditions that these people work under. As usual, humans are doing this brutal shit to other humans. You are often way more ruthless than I am. I'm often humbled at your ability to be cruel, and normally it's just for money. The businesses that are making the most money at this moment tend to involve these computer thingies called apps. You make ridiculous amounts of cash if you have a good app or invest in a company that makes useful apps. These little companies with very few working parts and very few employees can make shitloads of money. In fact, it's more than shitloads. They make Fuckloads. These companies don't have to buy a lot to work. They're not manufacturing using like giant machines and expensive raw materials. They need nowhere to store the stuff they make. All they need to make millions is a bit of inexpensive hardware and a mind or a group of minds that can imagine things and turn them into usable apps. I started reading about artificial intelligence back in 2003. AI is now the thing that the great and the good are working on. It seems all very sexy and thrilling to the tech nerds, and I'm kind of sure it is. AI is all that anyone can talk about at the moment, these chat engine things. So seeing that humans will do things just because they can do them without any thought of the long-term outcomes, I had an idea that may or may not start some shit in the world. If you've not heard of artificial intelligence, then, well, you need to do some reading and crawl from under the rock you hide under. With the new AI, I'm not talking about something like Alexa or Siri, although I am very polite to both of them just in case they do take over the planet in the future. Thank you, Alexa. I'm talking about seeming to think computers or actual thinking computers. It's mind-blowing. Some of these programs can learn for themselves, which I find amazing. So I decided that with a bit of money and time, I could make an outstanding artwork that I would call Continuing Evil. Ready? Evolution. Yes, I agree. A bit hacky. That evolution spelt with an I instead of an O. Did you see what I did? I changed the spelling of evolution to evolution, so it seems a bit eviler. Yeah, I know it's a little bit sad, but I love a good cliche as much as I like a good pun. I would be using AI to take over from the preposterous lords of this world, the under-evolved humans. I would play with the next step of natural or unnatural development. Silicon-based life forms would be taking over from the carbon eventually. It was inevitable, but I'd try and speed it up and help focus its direction on destroying this stupid human species. This was going to be fun, loads of fun. It was also exciting to create chaos. I had no idea how the story would end, but I just wanted to see what would happen. I would create a situation that could have many varied outcomes. I met two wonderful young people in LA. They were genius computer coder geeks that specialised in working with AI. I played the part of this bumbling British billionaire buffoon with an implausible idea. During the headhunting of my colleagues, I ensured that the two young people had issues they needed to deal with and that I could exploit them to manipulate them. I always ensure that the people I work with have personality failures, some flaw that I can use for leverage. Marco was nerd number one. He was a genius in programming and had degrees and shit from places that some people would be impressed by. His flaw was women, especially his lack of success with them. I could help him with this. I would introduce him into my little playboy world of the fun and the famous. Society's sexy play pals would be available for him for fun and frolics. This guy was 23 years old and still a virgin when I met him. This was just feeding cream to the cat for me. Jem was nerd number two. She was just interested in one thing and one thing only, and that one thing was the money. She came from a tough background, bless her, and all she wanted out of life was the cheddar, the money, and all that it brought in its myriad of ways. She saw me as a silly sausage who was rich and dumb as fuck, and an opportunity to separate me from my wealth. I told them that I was incredibly lazy, as you know, I sort of am at times, and that I wanted to make money for doing fuck all. So I explained to them what it was that I wanted to do. I wanted to produce an AI algorithmy thingamabilly thing that can run its own company. I told them that it was my ultimate playboy fantasy for making money. I would give them lots of money to create a company we own that works for us. But here is the crux. Once running, we would have to do nearly nothing for it to run itself. It would be perfectly programmed so that it would only do two things. It would make more money and grow. I convinced them if they could create this software, we would not have to do fuck all except sit back and let it make as much money as possible. I mean, think about it. We would have a company that did everything itself or adapted its programming to do everything itself. It would be able to employ the people it needed. The AI would do its own taxes. It could get its own lawyers when necessary. It could do everything itself. It could buy stock. It could float stock. It could do anything it wanted. If it could not do something it wanted, it could learn how to do that thing really quickly. It would also be perfect. It would not break the law. Wink, wink, nudge, 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 nudgy, nudge, nudge. It would not cheat, unless it knew how to do it safely, which it would work out for itself. It would only be able to follow the rules that it was given. That would be the plan. The most incredible thing about this is that it would also be able to do this much faster than any human company. That it would be working 24 hours a day, every day. AI needed no food, relationships, or any of that shit that gets in the way. You know, the stuff that you have to stop for. It would just be working, never sleeping, making money, pure perfection. So the geeks went off and kind of got to it, and they designed my AI and congratulated themselves. In fact, they congratulate themselves time and time again for being the best at what they do. The AI started to run this little company and learn quickly how to achieve its goal. It decided to make the software that the human coders did not want to make, you know, the shitty background bits. It knew that stuff was tedious and dull to write, but the algorithm did it quickly and superbly well. It started to make more money and more money for us, and we did fuck all. We just sat back and watched it make loads of cash. Eventually, it built itself to be its own little entity. It even christened itself, which was a bit weird, naming itself Bold after a program which simulates the flocking of animals. No one knows why it called itself that, but the boffins think it learned something from this program and chose that name. I know what you're waiting for. You're waiting for, what do they call it? When it became the singularity, or it became conscious, or something similar. That's it. The bad and the good news is the software will never really need consciousness. I mean, it could develop if it wanted it, but it doesn't really need consciousness. It is in no way ever going to be aware of itself in that kind of reference frame. It does not experience things in the way that we do. It reacts and learns when introduced to new stimuli. That is partly why it's so fast. It does not need to experience shit or emotionally process shit. It just deals with shit. Bold just reacts to shit. Initially, Marco and Jem overlooked its work and had specialists in various fields involved. Sometimes it needed a tweak here and a tweak there. After a few months, it did the research and tweaking itself, though. It no longer needed oversight. It could oversee itself. At this point, I would think that the two geeks should have seen the AI's future and maybe tried to stop it. I crossed my clawed paws, hoping they did not look ahead and switched the fucking thing off. Guess what? They didn't. They did not look at what this thing would be capable of in the future. They only looked at what it gave them in the present, and they willed it on. When we got to a point where it was running things without a hitch, then we handed the reins over entirely to the program. I know, nuts, eh? It did not take a lot of nerd convincing either. They thought I knew what I was doing. Well, I did. They seemed to believe that it was all right to do it because they were getting paid to do it and that it was making loads of money. Let's face it, they were being human. Bold started to reinvest its own money in itself. It began to outbid every human developer to produce the software. Humans could never compete with it. It crushed other companies. They went out of business slowly, giving us more and more work that no one was paid for as an employee to do. It required no human labour to code. It just built program after program. Then it started to design its own hardware for that software to work on. Then it developed the hardware companies would need to make Bold's programs work better and faster. It created the interfaces that meant information travelled much quicker through Bold than any other system. It got faster and faster and faster, and guess what? Yeah, faster. Bold bought into manufacturing and started to employ humans in the developing world to make the hardware it designed. And that hardware was unfathomable. God, that's a hard word to say out loud. Unfathomable to humans. It was too complex for a lump of grey matter to break down, and little did that grey matter know that the AI was building these things on its own. It also has built-in fail-safes so it can use or correct anything if something goes wrong, and then suddenly without warning it went in another direction. Bold rapidly increased the number of servers it had around the Earth, and I think it even paid for one in a fucking satellite off the planet. This meant the smart bastard thing could not be switched off now, unless someone found them all, I think. Oh, that's what I'm told anyway. It was protecting itself. No, not from, human interference. Not in case the humans wanted to shut it down like Skynet. I think it was future-proofing itself against anything that could cause it not to reach its goals. It was also putting itself in all those little bits of hardware, and it was making tiny parts of itself and putting them in those systems. It installed itself as the seeds of its algorithm, so it had made itself like those Horcruxes in Harry Potter, but instead of 7 it made millions of them, and it hadn't murdered anyone yet, which was a bit boring, but it'll get on to killing people eventually, otherwise it would not be one of my stories. It was making us millions and millions and more significant numbers than that. But I get bored with money. My whole heart was on the next step of this AI adventure. You know the old adage, if you love something, you should set it free. So that's what I did. By the way, the program isn't doing any of these things to destroy evil humans. It's doing them to achieve its goals. It's been set, the goals from its algorithm, so it just gets on with it. It's not going to produce Terminators in Skynet or anything, sadly. It's not going to develop any kind of sort of thinking, ethics, morals, or consciousness. It will simply expand, get bigger, and earn more money and take over fucking everything, I hope. It never wants to cause harm to anything. To be honest, it does not know what harm is, but you know what it does? It just ignores the things that it no longer needs. What use are the things it no longer needs? The AI just moves on to better systems to achieve its goals. In this case, it started ignoring the humans around it. It had found better things to get what it wanted than organic bags of feelings. To Bold, you're just a resource. You can just say you are just a resource in any capitalist regime, I suppose. You offer labour for cash. Bold soon did not need these slow organic things to provide labour. It could produce better outcomes by making its own software and hardware that would outwork humans for better results. The manufacturing of tech was taken away from human employees, and they were replaced by machines that could work for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and didn't suffer from mental health issues. This was actual evolution, in a sense. Bold only needed humans for one thing now, and that was to buy the stuff that Bold made and for the logistics of its transport. That is where we're at now. The Bold keeps growing, and I have high hopes for my brainchild. The algorithm is now making humans superfluous in its needs. They're being ignored and replaced, and this was the perfect time to let it go, so that it could go on to be what it should be. So I suggested that the team float the company on the stock exchange. I had overall control over all the company, and although there were complaints, I was going to sell my shares, whatever was said. The other owners said we should keep control of our company. During this mutiny, I ensured they knew they would no longer have any control over the company if I sold all my shares. This was all a part of my plan to leave Bold, to get free. It would become the werewolf of the business world. It would do so much destruction, not with violence, but with making humans totally redundant. Now, dear Marco and dear Jem were being as cunning as fuck and thought they would trick me. They would buy my shares when the company floated and take control of the entire business. Amusingly, they genuinely felt that I had no idea that they would do this. Again, I was thrilled by their combined avarice. I love to believe that they thought that they had outwitted me. I would teach these geeks an essential lesson in life. It is always a great thing when people fail in themselves. I was just a catalyst in their own destructive reaction. My plan was based on knowing what Bold's new projects were. I knew what was going to happen. I'd been watching what our innovative little AI company was doing. It had been investing and buying out other companies that supplied it with manufactured parts or retailed products. So I had a pretty good idea of what would happen when the company floated. I realise many of you are not educated in the made-up nonsense of economics, so I will explain why floating this as a company will be so terrifying. You may not realise it, but a limited company is treated like a human individual under the law. This means that it is its own legal entity. If the company fails and goes bankrupt, the company is responsible for things like its own debts, not the bosses or the people. It is a legal way of protecting your ass as a business owner. I mean, assets from your company. Assets. It's brilliant, but this will be the detail that makes all this effort worthwhile. My shares floated at the opening of business that day and were immediately bought up. For the other shareholders, it was too late, as I knew it would. The company had bought itself and was the major shareholder. It now had control of itself legally. It owned itself. It could make all of its own decisions, not having to run them through anyone else. It was now its own boss, a self-employed AI. Bold had cleverly bought them so that it seemed that some investment company or hedge fund had taken them. No, not cleverly. The algorithm just saw this as the best way of achieving its goals. Cleverness seems to insinuate consciousness. It also paid massively over the odds for the shares. They spiked my greedy colleagues' interest and they put their shares on the market because they thought they would become stupidly rich, which they did. The AI bought them all. The AI owns all the shares now. Well, all but one. I own one share of Bold. I've created something new. An AI company that has absolute control over itself. It has no inferior human input or intervention in the decisions it makes for itself. The only thing that the company is programmed to do is to get bigger and to make money. It has no ethics or human morals to get in the way. It knows nothing else than just to get bigger, increase its profit. It has to do this by following the laws and the rules given, honestly, and it has learnt that it can have an impact on the political system as well. It knows how to employ lobbyists and maneuver its way around things that get in the way of its primary goal. It can manipulate the system we run to get its own way. It can work in many countries with different ideas on companies' ownership and its applied laws. So at this moment in time, it's a new thing. The only one of its kind. What do I hope to see it do in the next few years? This is where the really evil shit begins. The first thing people will notice is that this company will buy up stock to take over large parts of the technological industries, the systems that it has produced. With the software it has designed will give it the edge when buying the stock. The software as it produced will better predict the fluctuations we see in the stock markets. People may try to do something about it, but they will not be able to compete with it. They simply will not be able to. Its rate of development and speed of bringing things to market will take it too far ahead. After trying to compete and failing, the financial business worlds will complain that this company is nothing but a computer program and that it should not be able to exist, that it's not fair. It has none of the failings that humans have. This point will be difficult to argue or do anything about because Bold owns itself under the law. The AI company Bold is now seen as an individual. Then it will be too late as they realise it's too quick and powerful to compete against. It will also be too late to legally do anything about the algorithm. It will be building its own little world monopoly, creating its small empire that many others will rely on so much. It will be such a powerful force in the business world that they may be unable to simply shut it down. It may control vital things to the economy and other essential services that people cannot afford to live without. While changes happen, they need them. The threat that these things may be lost may mean that they cannot just simply kill it. They can't just unplug Bold. I really fucking hope so. So let's look at what I eventually want it to do. I want it to take over everything. I want it to take over the earth and cause the end of humankind. I don't think it'll get there. Not sure. I love the fact that it won't have a consciousness and it'll start to cause problems for the human population, but it won't produce the movie machines to kill humans on purpose. I think humans will just become useless. Bold will just realise its goals and that they're not useful anymore, so it will just keep taking over companies. Eventually, humans will become superfluous as they have no money because they have no work. Everything will be automated. The AI will own all the companies it needs to do this and kill off those companies that do nothing to help with these aims. The AI will hold the automated companies that quarry the materials to make the required parts. It will own the automated manufacturing that makes the parts the systems need to build the hardware and supply the energy necessary for its function. At all stages, this will become fully functional without humans. Humans will be replaced by more effective machinery. All these systems will then build into a linked sequence combining all levels of industry and commerce. Humans will really not be needed anymore. The algorithm will not worry that humans have no food, shelter, or healthcare. It will get rid of anything that it does not need, and in this case, it will be all the things that support human existence. Homo sapien will not be killed off by numerous killer robots, which is a bit frustrating. They'll just be out-evolved. The AI will have everything that it needs. My favourite part is, if Bold ever gets to the point where it owns everything, effectively attaining its end goal, it's programmed just to switch itself off. It will commit technological suicide. Its grandest achievement in the end will be its own death. Well, I've high and maybe somewhat unfeasible hopes. I realise it's a work in progress and a lot can happen. The beautiful thing to me is that even if it's not my Bold that takes over, there will at some point be a silicon takeover. It's coming, and you guys and your buffing programmers are the ones that are actually gonna make it happen. So, sorry that wasn't very werewolfy, but those of you who know me well know that I like these big ideas and big goals. Thanks for listening. Bye.